Hey guys, welcome back to the readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Prorevenge Story. This tale takes place over the course of many months and resulted in over 150 layoffs, all to save 22 IT techs from losing their jobs. I learned a long time ago that no one cares about the IT team at our company. They see us as those useless employees always complaining about rules. We are a mortgage company, and those rules are the rules everyone follows to protect customer data privacy and to prevent theft. When your company suddenly loses 2 full payments for a house to some scammer in Belarus and the SEC has questions for you, then it is time to change your policies. This meant cutting legacy access, revoking unnecessary access, and correctly coding job titles in Active Directory to prevent people from granting their own access. What this boiled down to was a meeting that I joined remotely in March 2024. This was one of those meetings where I did not need to be there. Budget meetings. In this meeting, the VP over the accounting department, Rachel, played a recording showing times when someone in the IT tech team provided subpar service. She tried using this as reason to fire half of the tech team. "Just listen to this," Rachel said, playing a clip of someone speaking rudely to a client. "This is the kind of service your team provides. We can't afford this kind of customer treatment." The trouble was that all of the people she played recordings of were already fired for giving terrible customer service. These people were replaced by 5-star techs who know what they are doing and give excellent customer service. "Those techs don't even work here anymore," I pointed out. "We've already addressed those issues." Rachel just smiled thinly. "Well, how do we know the new ones are any better?" This started the whole chain of events that led to last week. Since this meeting was every 2 months, Rachel has tried to use her position and influence to grow her team while shrinking ours. Every budget meeting I would show up and Rachel, who shall hence be referred to as Toxic Rachel, would target my team. I would pull out the numbers and pull out the logs showing how my team received a little over 3/4 of that team's call volume. "Look at the data," I would say, sliding the reports across the table. "My team of 22 techs personally receive more phone calls than every other inbound call employee by more than double the number. I show how with the call volume we receive, we still maintain a 98% satisfaction rating." "That's impossible," Rachel would respond, rolling her eyes. "Nobody maintains that kind of rating with that call volume." At the July 2024 budget meeting, the COO, Marcus, had been tired of hearing the same excuses and wanted hard data. He had a point. I was merely throwing out basic numbers without providing real data. "I want comprehensive analysis by next meeting," Marcus said firmly. "Not just numbers thrown around. Real, actionable data. Our company was in the middle of a budget crisis, and someone needed to be cut. These budget meetings were basically a way to defend our own department from the chopping block." Toxic Rachel believed that the best defense was a good offense. She was right, but not in the way she thought. When it became clear that the IT support team was on the chopping block, Rachel starts to have her employees call into the tech center and have them make requests that she knows we cannot assist with as that is handled by another company entirely. We are not able to transfer calls to an external line, so the only thing we can do is give the number to call and hang up. The negative CSATs start to flood in after this. Every single call from that team regarding a vendor's password reset gets a negative CSAT. Our approval rating tanked to 72% in one day. I instantly took action. First, I contact a few of the users on recorded calls and ask them why they called the IT tech team when they know we are not capable of resetting the vendor's password. "Hi Jenna, this is Alex from IT. I noticed you called about resetting a vendor password yesterday." "Oh yeah," she replied. "I was told it was policy to do that now." I frowned. "And may I ask why you left a negative satisfaction rating?" "Oh, we were told those no longer count against employees. Those are only used for macro metrics now." I walked over to Rachel's office and walked in. "Rachel, why are you having your team call mine to reset vendors' passwords?" Rachel looked confused and stated that she did no such thing. She said she would talk to her team and make sure that they call the correct number in the future. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, not looking up from her computer, "but I'll send an email to remind everyone of proper protocols." The calls did not stop. Now, a few of her team were calling in with personal machines that were not an asset of our company. They were wanting things done which would violate license agreements with Microsoft or Dell. Each of these were refused, and each of these were leaving negative CSAT. It became clear that Rachel was trying to tank our stats before the next budget meeting. I let my boss Dave know, and he just gives me a sly smile. "The leash is off. Sick her." This is an inside joke between us, as I am someone who is very detail-oriented when I am focused. When you try and get my team fired because you want to grow your useless team, I am very focused on you now. Are you sure about this? I asked. Dave nodded. She's been gunning for us too long. Time to show what we can really do. The first thing I do is enable call recording for every corporate employee as to not arouse her suspicions. Her team did not have call recording enabled because her team handles CDP on a daily basis. I pull a live call and listen in. This is Megan with our company. May I have your account number or your name? The customer gives the name. Okay, I have your account pulled up. Are you wanting to make a payment? Customer says yes. Are you authorizing me to go ahead and make the withdrawal from the bank account we have on file? Customer agrees. Okay, payment is processing. You will be notified in X days when it is complete. Your next due date is this date. The customer thanks her, and he hangs up. Entire phone call was 122. Short phone call, so I listen to another. Similar situation. I listen to another and get the same thing. I start seeing a pattern here, so I go through the rapidly building log and see that all of the phone calls are usually less than 1 minute and 20 seconds long. It takes well over an hour before an anomaly occurs, and I see a 5-minute phone call. The customer needed an extension, and the employee was authorized to give her a 30-day extension to avoid a late fee if she would make a double payment next month. The person on the phone agreed. At this point, I also turn on the CSAT for her team only. I expected a largely similar rating as my team. I was not prepared for the nearly instant 50% rating that steadily dropped. Dave comes over to my desk as he was getting the email notifications for the sub 75% CSAT rating and was flabbergasted at the sheer volume of negative reports. What the hell? He muttered, staring at my screen. This can't be right. Oh, it's right, I replied. And it gets worse. It's now clear that there is no choice but to examine this further. I assign 4 people to review the negative calls from the other team and have them all. The amount of employees being downright rude to customers, not other employees but paying customers, over the phone was shocking. The negative tones in their voice, the unwillingness to fully answer questions, the extreme lack of empathy, and the shocking lack of mute button use was too much. Listen to this one, said Tyler, one of my analysts. She literally sighs and says, fine, whatever, when the customer asks for clarification. Then came another shocker. The number of customer-facing employees was ridiculous. 152 employees to handle roughly 30% more calls than my team of 22. I call the CIO Jonathan. What you got for me? Jonathan asked. I have something for you. It's incredibly evil, depressingly accurate, and can probably save the company a ridiculous amount of money. You know this is the second time you have said those exact words to me, right? Yep, but there is something I need to know first. I am not currently authorized to know it, and I need to request it in a way that would not set off any red flags. What is that? The starting pay scale for all account employees. Tell me your plan. The next budget meeting in September was not a budget meeting. It was an IT tech defend yourself meeting. Marcus directed it and let Rachel speak first. Rachel pulled out the same stuff as before. Calls upon calls to our group that were cherry-picked, as well as listing off dead zone times when we had people working but no one calling in. Then went on about how they could cut our group in half and hire more account employees to reduce the workflow. As you can see, Rachel said smugly, there are significant periods where IT staff are just sitting around. We could easily cut that department by 50% and redistribute resources to departments that actually need them. Instead of defending myself or my department, I played 4 of the short call recordings from Rachel's department. I then pulled up the Excel sheet that was color-coded showing how many phone calls each account rep received, and the length of time they were on each call, and the customer satisfaction rating. I explained the lack of high CSAT with my own little recording I like to call a fail-tage. It's a montage of Fail and her team were the stars. Before you ask, I did put music to it. The recording starts off with an employee saying, "Yeah, I guess I can take your payment." Then goes straight into one where a customer accidentally gave the wrong bank account info and said don't use that one. The rep responded with, "Christ, what is the actual account number?" It only got worse from there. This group was unmanaged for so long they were filled with rude and useless employees. I then showed them a side-by-side comparison of each tech who received a call. I showed how my techs were receiving more than 4 times the number of calls per rep than her team was getting per day. I showed how we all were on the phone for well over 7 times the amount of time her team was on the phone for, and I demonstrated how each tech had double or triple the satisfaction rating over all of her group. Half the room that was uninterested in the conversation were suddenly interested when I closed out my presentation. In short, I saw no reason to defend the IT team today as I have successfully done so in every prior meeting. Since the last meeting, however, Rachel has crossed the line and has had her team call mine in regards to things we have no access to. I played the recording of me calling her minion. As you can see here, she directed her team to call mine and to leave bad satisfaction ratings on my guys because of it. I have since deleted those CSATs as they served no purpose whatsoever. I then pulled out my next flowchart. This is the monthly expense, taken from the last 9 meetings, that our company spends on IT and servicing departments. I look at Marcus, who is looking at me intently. Before today, I was on the defensive as I saw no reason to attack another group, but it is clear to me now that my team has a target on its back. That is why I now show you this. It was a graph showing the starting pay scale for each IT and servicing employee code, as well as their average daily workflow. There was one glaring anomaly on this list. Account department had the highest starting pay scale with the least amount of work. So basically, in layman's terms, the account department can be reduced to 1/10 of its current size, and we can reduce the pay scale to a little over 1/2, as this department requires very little in the way of problem solving and critical thinking. I saw a few raised eyebrows as well as one impressed smile from Jonathan. Marcus ushers everyone out of the room except for me, Dave, and Jonathan. He looked at me and said, "Continue." Further, we can cut this department entirely and outsource them instead of it. Since this group merely takes payments and sometimes allows extensions, we do not have to worry too much about technical ability. Outside of simply using Windows, we can hire high schoolers if we wanted to. This got a laugh from Jonathan. Rachel was staring through the window with this smug grin on her face the entire time. Now, for my final bit for this meeting, I am going to play 2 cherry-picked phone calls. These are the 2 most technical phone calls I could find from the last month for both departments. I play a call where a payment fails to process, and the rep realizes she typed in the wrong number. "Oh wait, sorry about that. I mistyped your account number," the account rep says in a bored tone. I then play a call where it starts out with a user stating that her customer submitted a payment to the wrong CD. The tech breaks out into our procedure to prevent wire fraud. "Hold on, I need to initiate our fraud prevention protocol," our tech said calmly. "I'll need to verify a few things with you and then we can get this payment reversed immediately." Thanks to the quick action of this tech, we were able to reverse the CD and save this customer from losing their down payment. The final masterful stroke was playing my final card. As you all know, Rachel has been coming after my team for months. She has been grinding her axe against us because she, like everyone else, has made the mistake that we are incompetent, inept, and useless to the company. What she did not know was that I have all of the logs showing the truth. The smoke she has been blowing for years is so thick that it's ridiculous. Her team is highly replaceable, and we both know my team would require extensive training and effort to replace. Jonathan spoke up. "With just 30 people, we can outsource her entire department and save the company millions a year. The next time we have a major IT issue, you will be regretting outsourcing us." He then pointed to the graphs and flowcharts brought by both myself and Rachel. "Her team is useless." "Are you suggesting we eliminate an entire department?" Marcus asked, looking thoughtful. "I'm suggesting we optimize our resources," Jonathan replied, "and the data clearly shows where the inefficiencies lie." The next day, I watched in pure joy as a term request came in for Rachel. It came in with the double # indicator at the beginning, meaning this was a stealth term, to be done and coordinated with the person who will inform her of the termination. Over the next 2 months, the account team was shuttered. First, they came for anyone with disciplinary issues or attendance issues. Then they laid off anyone who had been there a really long time. Then the newest employees. The smart ones applied for other positions in the company or left before getting laid off. All the while, the calls for payments were slowly shunted to the call center in India. "Did you hear about Lisa in accounts?" Tyler asked me one morning. "She just found a position in marketing." "Smart move," I replied. "She's one of the good ones." By the end of last week, we only have 4 domestic accounts people who take escalations that the India call center is not authorized to take. Do I feel guilty about being integral for 148 people being laid off? Yes, quite. But I know it was necessary to keep my job and my health insurance. Without my health insurance, I am a dead man. The entire reason why this happened, though, was because a division was slated to be cut and sent to India from the outset. Thanks to the actions of myself and Dave, we prevented it from being a sure thing that our team was going to get cut. On top of that, we cut out a festering wound in the company that was slowing it down and costing it money. My team has not been brought up in the budgetary meeting since. The next one is an entitled people story. So this happened about 2 years ago, and I'm still getting a chuckle out of it whenever I drive past the fancy neighborhood next to mine. I live in a regular suburban house that I inherited from my grandfather, and it sits right on the border between my normal neighborhood and this upscale development called Meadowbrook Heights. The difference between the two areas is like night and day. My side has older homes with character, decent-sized lots, and people who mind their own business. Their side has cookie-cutter McMansions, manicured lawns that look like golf courses, and apparently a homeowners association with way too much time on their hands. My property line runs right along the main entrance road to their development, which becomes important later. When my grandfather bought the house back in the day, this whole area was just farmland. The fancy development got built around us maybe 15 years ago, but our house predates everything by decades. We were never part of their HOA, never signed any agreements, and frankly never wanted anything to do with their uptight community. The trouble started when my wife and I decided to renovate our kitchen. It was a big project that required us to basically gut the entire room and start over. We're talking new cabinets, countertops, flooring, electrical work, plumbing, the whole 9 yards. Since we'd be without a functional kitchen for at least 2 months, we figured we needed somewhere to store our food and have basic cooking facilities. That's when I got the bright idea to rent one of those travel trailers. Not some beat-up old thing, mind you, but a nice 28-foot unit with a full kitchen, bathroom, and sleeping area. The plan was to park it in our driveway and basically live in it during the renovation. It made perfect sense. We'd have everything we needed right there on our property, and it was way cheaper than staying in a hotel for 2 months. I parked the trailer in my driveway, got it all hooked up to power and water, and we started our temporary adventure. For the first week, everything was great. The renovation was moving along, we had a comfortable place to stay, and life was good. Then came the knock on our door. This woman shows up at my front door dressed like she's heading to a country club board meeting. She introduces herself as the president of the Meadowbrook Heights HOA and starts going on about how my trailer violates their community standards. I let her finish her whole spiel about property values and community aesthetics before I pointed out the obvious: I don't live in Meadowbrook Heights. She gets this look on her face like I just told her the earth was flat. Apparently, she was so used to everyone in the area being under her jurisdiction that she couldn't comprehend someone not being subject to her rules. I explained that my house predates their development, we were never part of their HOA, and therefore their rules don't apply to my property. You'd think that would be the end of it, but this lady was persistent. She starts arguing that even though I'm not technically in their HOA, my property is visible from their entrance road, and therefore it affects their community. She's going on about how the trailer looks trashy and is bringing down everyone's property values. I tried to be reasonable. I explained about the kitchen renovation, showed her the permits we had pulled, and pointed out that the trailer was temporary and would be gone in a couple months. But she wasn't having any of it. She demanded that I remove the trailer immediately or she'd take action. When I asked what kind of action she thought she could take against someone who wasn't even in her HOA, she got all huffy and stormed off. I figured that was the end of it, but boy was I wrong. Over the next few days, I started getting these official-looking letters from the HOA. The first one was a formal complaint about my trailer violating section this and subsection that of their community guidelines. The second one was a notice of fine. They were actually trying to fine me $500 for the trailer violation. The third one threatened legal action if I didn't comply immediately. Each letter I received just made me more annoyed. Here I was, minding my own business on my own property, dealing with a major renovation, and this HOA president thought she could boss me around like I was one of her subjects. I wrote back explaining once again that I wasn't a member of their HOA and their rules didn't apply to me, but the letters kept coming. The situation escalated when she started showing up at my house with different board members, trying to intimidate me into compliance. They'd stand in my driveway taking pictures of the trailer, measuring distances to the property line, and generally making a nuisance of themselves. One time, I caught them trying to peek inside the trailer windows, which really crossed a line for me. Things came to a head about 3 weeks after the first encounter. I was inside the trailer making lunch when I heard sirens outside. I looked out to see 2 police cruisers pulling into my driveway, and there was the HOA president standing on the sidewalk with a smug look on her face. The officers were professional about it. They explained that they'd received a complaint about an illegal RV camping situation and needed to investigate. I invited them inside the trailer, showed them all my documentation, the rental agreement, renovation permits, property deed, everything. It took about 15 minutes for them to figure out what was really going on. One of the officers actually started laughing when he realized the HOA had called them to enforce HOA rules on someone who wasn't even in the HOA. He went over to the president and very politely explained that I wasn't breaking any laws, wasn't violating any city ordinances, and was well within my rights to park whatever I wanted on my own property. The president wasn't satisfied with this answer. She started arguing with the officers about property values and community standards. That's when the other officer pointed out that filing false police reports was actually illegal, and if she kept wasting their time with frivolous complaints, she could face charges herself. You should have seen the look on her face when the officers basically told her to buzz off and stop harassing me. She was used to getting her way through intimidation and official-sounding letters, but real legal authority wasn't backing her up. But here's where it gets interesting, and where my malicious compliance kicks in. As the officers were leaving, one of them mentioned something that gave me an idea. He said that as long as I wasn't violating any city codes, I could park whatever I wanted on my property for as long as I wanted. That got me thinking. The HOA president had made such a big deal about my temporary trailer affecting their precious community standards. She'd wasted police time, sent me threatening letters, and generally made my life miserable for weeks. All because she couldn't stand the sight of my clean, well-maintained rental trailer. So I started doing some research. Turns out, the city didn't have any restrictions on how long you could keep an RV on your own property as long as it was properly connected to utilities and wasn't causing health or safety issues. There were also no restrictions on how many RVs you could have. The renovation finished up after about 6 weeks, but I kept the rental trailer for the full 2 months I'd originally planned. During that time, I'd grown pretty fond of the setup. It was nice having a backup kitchen and extra space for guests. Plus, every time I saw the HOA president drive by and get that annoyed look on her face, it brought me a little joy. When the rental period was up, I had a decision to make. I could return the trailer and go back to normal life, or I could double down on the malicious compliance. The president had spent so much time complaining about one temporary trailer affecting their property values and community aesthetics. She'd called the police, sent threatening letters, and generally acted like my trailer was the worst thing that had ever happened to their neighborhood, so I bought my own trailer. Not just any trailer, mind you, but a big 35-foot monster with slide-outs and everything. I parked it right in my driveway where it was perfectly visible from their fancy entrance road, completely legal, completely within my rights, and completely permanent. But wait, it gets better. Remember how the officer mentioned I could park whatever I wanted on my property? Well, my lot is pretty big, and I started thinking about all that unused space. My wife thought I was going crazy, but she was also tired of the HOA harassment, so she was on board with my plan. Over the next few months, I acquired 2 more trailers. One was a smaller travel trailer that I got for practically nothing from a neighbor who was moving. The other was an old Airstream that needed some work, but looked pretty cool once I fixed it up. I parked all 3 of them strategically around my property, making sure they were all clearly visible from the HOA's entrance road. The reaction was immediate and beautiful. The HOA president started showing up again with her board members, but this time they just stood there staring in defeat. They knew they couldn't do anything about it. I wasn't breaking any laws, wasn't violating any city codes, and definitely wasn't subject to their HOA rules. The letters started up again too, but now they had a desperate tone to them. The president was begging me to reconsider, offering to pay me to remove the trailers, and even suggesting they'd help with my next renovation project if I'd just cooperate. But I was committed to my malicious compliance at this point. The best part came about 6 months later when I overheard some of their residents complaining at the local coffee shop. Apparently, potential home buyers were being turned off by the trailer park visible from the entrance road. Several sales had fallen through, and property values in the development were starting to stagnate while the rest of the area continued to appreciate. The HOA president eventually approached me with a formal offer. They wanted to buy a strip of my property along their entrance road and plant some trees to block the view of my trailers. The offer was generous, probably twice what that piece of land was actually worth, but it came with conditions about removing the trailers. I thought about it for a while, but ultimately decided against it. Not because I wanted to keep being petty, but because I'd actually found some good uses for the trailers. The big one became a workshop for my woodworking hobby. The small one turned into a guest house for when family visited, and the Airstream became my wife's art studio after she took up painting. In the end, the HOA president resigned from her position about a year after the whole thing started. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that the stress of dealing with declining property values and angry residents had gotten to her. The new president was much more reasonable and never bothered me about the trailers. The funny thing is, after a couple years, people got used to seeing the trailers. New residents in the HOA development didn't think anything of them since they'd always been there. And honestly, my property probably looks more interesting and lived in than their sterile McMansion development. Looking back on it, I probably could have handled the whole situation differently. I could have been more diplomatic, maybe worked out some kind of compromise from the beginning. But when someone tries to bully you with fake authority and threatens you with legal action over something that's perfectly legal on your own property, sometimes a little malicious compliance is exactly what they need to learn their lesson. The The trailers are still there, by the way, all three of them, visible from the Meadowbrook Heights entrance road, and every time I see a new HOA board member drive by and do a double take, I'm reminded that sometimes the best way to deal with unreasonable people is to give them exactly what they're complaining about, just more of it than they ever imagined possible. The next one is a petty revenge story. Neighbor's son, Garth graduated college about this time last year and got his first full-time career job at a company. He's in the IT department of a branch office and does IT things. Total number of employees at this office is around 20. Some are sales, some work in the office. Karen is the office manager. When Garth first started, there were 3 IT people. They had an office in the basement away from the rest of the employees. This suited Garth just fine. He's a quiet, introverted young man. Highly intelligent, but he's not a social person. Would rather spend his time off gaming than live interaction. As you can imagine, he's not a big kid, maybe $1.50 after eating a big steak for dinner. The other 2 IT people eventually move on to other jobs, and corporate doesn't replace them. Now Garth has 3 times the work without receiving a raise. Garth voices his concerns to Karen about workload and call-outs, and he gets the standard feeble corporate responses and condescending lecture. I don't know why he didn't quit then, but he stuck it out hoping to eventually be recognized for his worth, etc. Whenever I spoke with him, he'd say how bad it was working for Karen, but his saving grace was he was in his solitary office most of the day and did not have to have much contact with her, until one day back in February. He got a phone call from Karen telling him to come upstairs. Upon arriving, he's directed to start moving furniture around. Garth takes a look around and tells Karen his job does not call for moving heavy objects. Karen gets loud and calls his manhood into question in front of everyone, but Garth does not budge. Life changed for Garth after that. Karen had decided to make work miserable for him. She started repeatedly writing him up for whatever she could think up. Here comes the petty revenge. Garth starts snooping and discovers that Karen is having an affair with a married co-worker. Their work phones are synced up to the computer system, which Garth has access to. Garth has created a mass corporate email with various screenshots of the sexting. He rigged it to be sent out today, from her own email account. The beauty of it all. Garth walked in Friday and tendered his resignation to corporate HR. He left his ID card and whatever else on Karen's desk. Karen made a big deal of shouting to Garth as he was leaving to not let the door hit him in the ass on the way out. When the email is sent out, they may well suspect that Garth was the perpetrator, but they'll never be able to prove it. I can only hope Garth's revenge is sweet and spectacular. The next one is a malicious compliance story. So, back in the day I was a truck driver. The company had a few trucks that were made for different jobs. Depending on the job you had to deliver determined the truck you drove, so it was not too uncommon to drive 3 different trucks in one day. The company was piss poor on maintenance of the vehicles. Over the years with them, I received a few fines for things like no inspection and stuff like that. Even though I received the fine, the company would pay the fine. No harm, no foul. Finally, our big truck really started to go downhill. It got to the point where it was barely running and needed a ton of repairs costing thousands to fix. I told the company I refused to drive the truck as it was an accident waiting to happen. Well, this lasted a week, and then they said that I needed to drive the truck for one delivery. Unfortunately, I agreed out of a need to be a team player and service my customer. The drive was horrible. It was leaving a trail of smoke 10 feet high as I drove down the highway. I knew I was in trouble when they loaded a case of motor oil in the cab for me to fill the engine if needed. On the way there, and the AM cars behind me were turning on their high beams to see because of the smoke trail I was leaving. Then, as the sun finally came up, people were pulling up next to me on the highway, honking and giving me the finger. I found out so much liquid oil was coming out the exhaust that oil was landing on the vehicles behind me. It was only a 50-mile round trip, and the truck lost 24 quarts of oil and almost a tank of fuel. So I told them I would not drive the truck till it's fixed. As a truck driver, you are required to do a pre-trip inspection of the vehicle prior to driving every day. You mark down the defects, and there is room for notes in the logbook. 1 copy stays in the truck, and 1 copy goes to the company. There's a 3rd copy that goes to DIAT if requested. I made sure to fill this out fully every time I drove this truck. I also made a separate list, mostly as a note for myself covering things that I thought was important but not necessarily a part of the pre-trip inspection. The next day I came in and found the truck fully loaded. I told them I was not driving the truck. They said, well, you have to. After a quick thought, I said, okay. Malicious compliance. I pulled out of the lot. At the traffic light, I'd make a left to head to the job. However, I was out of fuel, so I had to turn right to get to the gas station to fuel up, then backtrack to head to the job. And yes, I meant gas. It was a 33K LB truck with a gas engine. Well, DOT was set up on the other side of the road just before the gas station. They watched as I drove by, wishing they could get me. In case you don't know, DOT stands for the Department of Transportation. For big trucks, they run the weigh stations on the highway. But in heavy truck areas, they set up a mobile station and inspect trucks randomly. They verify paperwork is in order and the vehicle and driver are safe. Any fines here are expensive. Plus, they can put a truck out of service, meaning it cannot be driven till repaired. At that point, it must be towed and fixed. Then I pull in the fuel station. As I'm filling, I can feel them watching me. So, I leave the fuel station and head back towards DOT. They run out into the street to make me pull in. They wanted this truck. I pull in and shut down the truck. The DOT cop walks up to the truck with a creeper. I say, "Why do you need that?" He says, "What?" I say, "The creeper." He says, "I gotta check your truck." I say, "Nah, I got a list." I hand him my notes and logbook. He says, Then he goes back to his car and I can see him furiously writing. After about 30 minuets, he comes back. He says to me, "Why are you driving this truck?" I tell him they told me I had to. "There's no other truck?" he asks. "Nope," I reply. "What happens if you don't drive this?" he asks. I say, "I guess I sit home." He says, "I'll be right back." After about another 20 minuets, he comes back to me. He slaps a big red out-of-service tag on the windshield. Then he tells me, "There are 21 issues that are putting the truck out of service. Plus, I am giving the company a fine for letting you drive this truck. Unfortunately, your fuel tax sticker is expired. If I write you up for this, it is a $10,000 fine to you. But I called in the local cops. It will be a $90 fine for you that the company should pay." I thank him and he leaves. I call the company and get a ride back to the warehouse. Bottom line, they paid all fines which were north of $65,000 including towing. The next week, we had a fleet of new leased trucks with a maintenance plan with replacement trucks, if ours were down for issues, and they came out and washed the trucks twice a month. I worked there another 2 years and quit because of other truck issues. A competitor poached me with better money. But this goes to show, I am not risking my life and the public's life for your job. In the end, you paid for a $65,000 lesson. When I say I'm not doing it unless it's safe. Then I pull in the fuel station. As I'm filling, I can feel them watching me. Anyway,